been in the HR space since I think almost 2 decades, and he might have developed some very high tolerance for the ambiguity. So Mayank, I would like to ask you that we are seeing a lot of job losses during the pandemic, and professionals across the board are getting salary cuts, delayed payments, or layoffs are happening. So what will be the job scenario post-COVID? I would like you to address this. And what tips will you like to give to the participants to become an intangible asset for their organization? Over to you, Mayank.
Yeah, thanks, Sakshi, and thanks, Gaurav, for inviting me over for this session. So I'll try and keep it crisp, and I'll share my personal, experiences as well to address the question that you asked. Can you?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes.
Sure. So basically, I feel around the job scenario perspective that organizations will consolidate, the big will get bigger. The functional silos that exist in organizations today will further reduce. Repetitive and routine jobs will either get automated or outsourced. Hence, it will be very important that employees remain relevant in their current jobs. As far as the broad scenario is concerned, I think industries like hospitality, retail, hospitals, and reality, the jobs will come back at an even faster pace than we lost them, because once you have a vaccine, once the economy opens up, people will start using these facilities again. So having said what the job scenario is, I'd also like to add what kind of companies will really survive and thrive during COVID or post-COVID. I think there are four inherent factors that an organization must have in order to survive and thrive. First is that I think these are times that test the true values of an organization. We all knew what happened in 2008 when there was a terrorist attack on Taj and Oberoi, and how the two hotels handled the scenario very differently. In one of my previous companies, we had a regulatory challenge around some products, and one of our products we could not even sell for 6 months. So that was a real test of that organization, whether we decide to lay off people that time or we engage them in other businesses. We train them when the products are launched again in a 3 to 6 months time. The second attribute that the organization must have is that organizations must have learning agility, or they must be learning organizations. What I mean by learning organizations is that the organization must be able to provide learning opportunities to its members, and it must itself also continuously transform. To give you an example, Taj has recently launched something called Taj Homestays, wherein they have taken the heritage bungalows of Tata Coffee and they have converted it into homestays. So that's an innovation. Most of us on this panel today are from the healthcare space. So there are so many new products that are being launched, every quarter, every month. That is something that is a testimony of a learning organization. Next 2 points. One is that any organization to survive and thrive must have a very sharp focus on its talent. We must be able to identify our top talent, retain them, have development plans for them, and have succession plans for every critical role in the organization, because the toughest job, one of the key jobs that most CEOs and HR people face, is to retain their top talent. Finally, organizations must also have a very inclusive culture, so that all types of employees, all levels of employees are able to contribute to the growth of the organization. Finally, Sakshi, coming to your question around what can employees do to become indispensable, or to be able to be valuable assets to the organization. And I remember when I started my career about 20 years back with the Piramal Group, and I remember this distinct line from Mr. Ajay Piramal, and he said, 20 years from now, imagine the person's vision. He said, 20 years from now, there will be no finance managers, HR managers, supply chain managers. There will be only business managers. So for us to be invaluable to our organizations, we must understand how the business makes money and be able to contribute to the growth of the organization. We must have, as employees or members of an organization, an outside-in approach. You must be able to bring to the table what's happening outside the organization in whichever industry you are in, the best practices, and implement it in an organization. Learning agility is very critical. We must all learn and grow every day of our careers, else we become redundant. And more and more as situations as tough as COVID face us, our alignment to the core values of the organization, to the culture of the organization, will also play a very critical role. Due to paucity of times, I'll probably just summarize and say that to be relevant in this changing times, we need to get up every morning, do the best that we can at our jobs, and have faith in ourselves, in the Almighty, and in the economy, and in the global scenario that evolves as more and more opportunities come by. So
Excellent
that's
point. Excellent point, Mayank. Learning agility, inclusive culture, innovation. Within short, I think 7-8 minutes, you have given us a lot of valuable points to absorb. So
thanks.
thanks a lot for that. And may I request Sakshi ji to please.
Yeah, thanks, Mayank. I think very valid points which you said: reskilling, learning, outside in approach, and trust the organization as well as trust the economy. Thank you so much. Last but not the least, I'd like to address